Hi, welcome. My name is Dr. Debbi Kooyman with liveyourlifefully.com, and I want to talk to you today about how fear is like a swarm of bees. Now that may sound strange to you, but I like visual analogies, and visual analogies help me to be able to understand things better and to think about and process them better in my brain. So I like to come up with different visual analogies for different types of things. And the analogy that I've come up with for fear is a swarm of bees. So that might sound strange. So bear with me, hear me out, and I'll explain what I mean. So picture with me for a minute a swarm of bees. We're going to pretend the swarm of bees is over here. So imagine the swarm of bees. There's all these little bees buzzing around all over. It's fast, it's chaotic, it's kind of crazy. Most of us find that scary. If we see a swarm of bees, we probably want to get away from it. Again, it seems kind of chaotic. It's buzzing around all crazy and fast, and it seems kind of scary in there. So what I like to imagine with fear is that our fear is like this swarm of bees, but rather than little bees, this swarm is made up of letters. So there's a swarm of all of these letters, picture with me, all of these letters buzzing around everywhere, very chaotic. It's vibrating very quickly, moving very fast, and we look at it and it looks scary. It's overwhelming. There's all of this stuff flying all over the place. I don't know what to do with it. And so, I want to turn away. I want to get away from it. And those letters that are swarming all over in here, what I like to imagine is those letters are the individual sentences, the letters from the individual sentences that make up our individual fears. So let's say I'm afraid of something. Typically there's a lot of kind of sub-fears within our big fears. And like I said, what I like to imagine is that all of those fears, all the letters of the words in those sentences and those fears aren't in nice orderly sentence form. They're all jumbled and mixed and mumbled all over in the swarm, and then it seems much more chaotic and crazy than it really is. And when it's crazy and chaotic all over here, I think most of us could see why we would want to turn away from that, because we don't like chaos and we're not sure what to do with all of this. So hopefully you're following me. Hopefully that makes sense. So then what I like to do with this swarm of letters is I like to have people take time to detract the individual letters from the swarm, to put them in order, and to make them more distinguishable and easier to understand. And it helps kind of break down our fears. So again, I have a fear of something, all the letters are jumbled over here. If I can take them and make them into sentences, a sentence, again, there's order to that, but that is probably a little easier for me to handle than this. And I can do something with the sentence. And what I usually have people do is write the sentences, which are what your specific fears are, what the specific things you're afraid of, and then I have people do something with that. So let me try to come up with an example so I can show you how this works. So let's see. Maybe I'll share an example from, I'm trying to think of an example that would work well for this one. I'm going to share an example from somebody I work with. So she has been divorced. She got married when she was younger, thought things were going well, had her plan all set out to be married, have kids, thought everything was going to be fine. And you know, at one point everything fell apart for her, and, you know, I won't go into all of the details because I don't think that's necessary, but things fell apart. She ended up getting divorced. It was very, very devastating for her, very, very painful, and it's been a long rebuilding process for her, and she's currently in a new relationship, and a lot of fear is coming up. And if you watch my other videos on primary, secondary fear, she's got both primary fear, or primary, secondary emotions. She's got both primary fear and she's got a lot of secondary fear. So what this might look like is, okay, all this fear, her primary fear, her secondary fear, which are several, are all just a mass of letters flying around over here in this beehive, or in this swarm of bees, and very scary, very overwhelming, not sure what to do with that. So all these letters, again, are individual fears. So some of those individual fears might be, you know, I'm afraid of getting hurt again. I'm afraid of being vulnerable. I'm afraid that the other shoe's going to drop. I'm afraid of allowing myself to attach to somebody else. And most of these are with the fear of being hurt. So, and you know, there's some primary fear of, it's scary to kind of be, there's some fear of being open, of being vulnerable, of being hurt again. Certainly when we've been hurt before, I think that's normal. That's appropriate for us to have some caution and to be afraid. So those are some of the primary ones. You know, I'm afraid of being vulnerable. I'm afraid of being hurt again. I'm afraid of getting divorced again. So I'm afraid of getting married. Some of the secondary fears might be, you know, I'm afraid it's me. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid if I, you know, get attached to this person, they're going to leave me, they're going to reject me, they're going to abandon me. I'm afraid that they're going to see all my flaws and they're going to leave. I'm afraid of investing time and then it not working out. I'm afraid I'm not making the right decision. I'm afraid I'm wasting my time. I'm afraid I'll invest and then it won't work out and then I'll have to start back over at square one. I'm afraid of sharing my feelings. I'm afraid of sharing my needs. I mean, there's all sorts of fears that could go into there. And again, if you take all of those and you jumble them all up, you can see that could be like a pretty big swarm of letters over here that would be really scary. So like I said, what I have people do is take your swarm, sit down. I like to do it in writing, but not everybody does. So you can do it in writing, you can do it in your head. What I encourage you to do is take the swarm, start taking those individual letters out and make sentences. I'm afraid of blank. I'm afraid of blank. I'm afraid of blank. Whatever those are for you. And, you know, it may just be a few. It may be a lot. Sometimes you might surprise yourself when you start writing how many things that you're afraid of, which can help you make sense why this is so scary. In addition to fear in general, if you watched my video on fear that I had before, fear in general, we want to run away from and avoid because that's biologically how we're designed. So this helps us to break things down, help it to feel not so scary. Again, a sentence is not quite as scary as this jumble up here. I can see it, I can own it, I can identify it. We can start to separate out primary and secondary fears possibly so that we can, you know, really deal with, really express those primary fears. And then what I have people do once they have that list, kind of a next step, is to look at your fears and try to develop some sort of plan for it. So I'm afraid of being vulnerable. So there might be several things that you could do. You could write stuff like, you know, it's okay that I'm afraid. It's okay to be afraid of being vulnerable. It's understandable that I'm afraid. You might write stuff to remind yourself it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to take chances. It's okay to let myself love again. And then with stuff like that. And these might be, like with those ones, really might be kind of things you're telling yourself to help you kind of calm and reassure yourself that it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay for you to keep being vulnerable. It's okay to push through the fear. You know, part of what you might write to is, you know, I choose to allow myself to be vulnerable. I'm capable of being vulnerable. I'm capable of dealing with something if something happens. You know, things don't go well. I have the capacity to cope with that. That goes along with I'm afraid of being hurt. I'm afraid of, you know, investing again and wasting time or letting myself be hurt. With a lot of that, what we're actually afraid of is feeling the feelings. And so I'm afraid that I'm going to have to feel those feelings again. So part of the plan might be some similar, you know, thoughts, beliefs that you challenge, that, you know, it's okay to invest. It's okay if things don't work out. It's okay if I experience pain sometimes. Again, the reassurance, I'm capable, I can handle this, I can get through it. And then sometimes I have people do very concrete things, like if that happened, if, you know, tomorrow or next week or next year or whatever, this relationship wasn't to work out, what would you do? And get very specific. You know, when you're hurting, what are you going to do to cope with that hurt? And again, very specific. I'm going to call my best friend. I'm going to let myself cry. I'm going to journal. I'm going to, I have a Johnny Peppy stuffed animal who is my comfort buddy when I'm crying. So poor thing, I've had him since I was 16, and he's had thousands of tears shed on his poor head. But he's wonderful. So I'll get my Johnny Puppy and cuddle up with him and cry all over his head. I'll go, you know, take myself out to dinner, do something nice for myself. You know, I'll take a hot bath. I'll do whatever. I mean, you could go on and on. There's lots of things that you can do, but like I said, I encourage people to get very, very specific. When you're hurting, what can you do? How can you remind yourself, you know, I'm hurting. It's okay that I'm feeling this way. It's okay for me to express these feelings. Reminding myself I can get through this. It's not going to last forever. All of those things can be part of the plan. And the more specific you can get, the better you can kind of, you know, provide that reassurance to yourself that, hey, if this happens, I'll be okay. Because I think that's a lot of the biggest fear is, if this happens, I'm going to feel feelings I don't want to feel. I won't know what to do with them, and I'm not going to be okay. And reality is that's not true. Our feelings can be very uncomfortable and painful, but our feelings don't kill us. Your feelings aren't going to kill you, even if you really, really, really don't like them, and even if they really, really, really hurt. And there are lots of things we can do. There are lots of resources we have. I just did a video on breath. So we have our breath. You know, I can make sure that every day I'm breathing and I'm taking deep breaths. I'm relaxing, I'm meditating. You know, there are things we can do, resources we have to help us cope with whatever emotion comes our way. No matter how painful they are, we have the ability to cope with them. And you have designed into your body already everything you need to cope with anything that comes your way and any emotion that comes out of your body. You have the capacity to cope with that. And if you don't know what those resources are, I would encourage you to, you know, do some research, do some online research. I have some information in some of my other videos. I have some information on my website. You could go see a therapist if you're not already seeing me or another therapist. You know, find tools, because there are tools out there. There are things that you can do. So those are what I encourage people to do. You take the swarm, write specific fears, write specific plans for how to deal with each of your fears. Some of them are more, you know, challenging your thoughts. Some of them are more coping with emotions. Some of them might be more, you know, oh, I'm afraid, that, if I lose my job, I won't be able to feed myself or pay my bills. So then there might be more concrete things of, well, what would you do? What resources do you have? Where could you go? And very important. And then what you do when you have those fears, because your fear doesn't necessarily go away just because you have a plan, but you have a plan for it now. So when you have that fear, what you can do is you can bring up your plan. You can bring it up physically if you want to, read it. You can remind yourself in your head. You can say, okay, if this happens, this is what I can do. Because a lot of times we have anticipatory fear, which is we're anticipating something is going to happen and we're afraid of it. A lot of times it doesn't even happen. But we have that like, okay, if this happens, this is what I can do. This is what I'm going to do. And if it's happening right now, the thing that I'm afraid of, I can get out that plan and start applying the plan. And then it gives me something to do rather than just kind of panic and freak out. And with fear, a lot of times we feel powerless. Like it feels bigger than us. The swarm of bees feels, or the swarm of letters in this case, feels bigger than us. And I shrink and I feel powerless. And this helps us, it helps you to keep your power within yourself, take your power back. It gives you things to do with your power. I can write out these fears. I can come up with a plan. I can remind myself of the plan when it comes back up. I can implement my plan. I'm the one that's in control, not my fear. My fear is just an emotion. My fear is going to come and go. It's part of our normal humanity, humanness. It's an important part, so it's going to be there, but I don't have to let it be more powerful than me. There are things I can do with my fear that will help me to feel the fear and do it anyway, as we say, to push through the fear, to not be so overcome or overwhelmed by our fear. And it helps shrink our fear back into a more appropriate proportion, and it makes it so that it's not such a controlling factor in our lives. Because I know a lot of people that I work with, and myself included at different points in my life, have felt like fear has been a driving force, and fear has been controlling what I do. Fear may be controlling what you do right now, or it may be in the past, and you don't want it to anymore. So this is one of those things that you can do to help you better understand your fear and help you cope with it so that it doesn't have so much power in your life. And it works. I apply this in my own life. I've been doing this for several years. It's something I actually started doing when I went through my own divorce and was super, super helpful then. I apply it to little fears. I apply it to big fears, and it has been a huge, 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 huge help in my life. And, I believe that if you make the choice to use it and be consistent and apply it, I think it can help you too. So thank you again, as always, for watching, taking your time to be with me, and I hope you found it helpful. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, comment below or email me at drkooyman@liveyourlifefully.com. Thanks so much. Take care.